Great. Hi, everyone. This is Clarissa Hayes with the Food Research and Action Center. We are so glad that you could join us today for our webinar on adding after-school meals to your operations. We will also be highlighting some new findings from our brand new after-school meals report, which was released this past Tuesday. So I'm very excited to be facilitating this conversation around the CACFP after-school meal program. We know, to put it lightly, that the last 7 months have definitely brought some new challenges and things to consider for both school nutrition directors and community sponsors. Actually, a recent survey by SNA found that 62% of school districts anticipate a loss this school year, with an additional 28% of respondents unsure of what to expect. So we know that across the country, schools and community sponsors are adapting and changing their operations to respond to the ongoing pandemic. I would also flag, too, that many after-school programs, which we know are the foundation for after-school suppers, have also been affected. So thinking about YMCAs and Boys and Girls Clubs and Parks and Rec. So this is a perfect time to think about your after-school meal service and how it can be adjusted or adapted to fit the need. So we know that after-school suppers and snacks are a great way to bolster nutrition department finances during this time because all meals are reimbursed at the free rate. And, while there will be some added logistics for adding this program, there are also ongoing flexibilities available through June 30th, 2021, which makes it easier to operate and account for the pandemic. So we will definitely be diving into those. And I wanted to also say that we have two great speakers joining us today, one from a school district and one from a community organization, and they are going to share their story about how their CACFP supper after-school operations have adapted during COVID. So whether you are new to the program or maybe looking to make small adjustments, we hope you walk away with some new insight from today's webinar. So very thankful that you can join us today. We know, I'm sure you've been hearing this, that everyone is very busy right now, so we appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And before we really dive in, I did want to start with a quick poll. We are interested in where you are with CACFP suppers at this point. I know it has been quite a roller coaster with the different waivers and flexibilities and guidelines. So if you could we're going to take about 40 seconds, I think, and give you a chance to fill in this poll. So the question is, please select the option which best represents your after-school nutrition participation. So A, I served CACFP supper snacks pre-COVID and have continued to do so. B, I did not serve CACFP suppers snacks pre-COVID, but participate now. C, I have not yet operated CACFP, but I'm planning to start. Or if you are joining us from a national, state, or local group and you are an advocate, you can select option D, that you do not operate any type of food service. So again, we will give folks about 30 more seconds to fill that in just so we can see who's joining us today, and then we will dive in. All right. So the poll results should be showing up on your screen. It looks like we have a nice mix of folks joining us. It looks like we do have a good representation from state and local advocates, which is great. We know that you are working very hard on the ground to support the schools and community sponsors in your area. It looks like we had a couple who weren't serving CACFP before COVID, but continue to do so, and those that are looking to learn more and to get started. So we hope you will find this webinar helpful and you can walk away with some new insight. All right, so next slide, please. I'm going to briefly go over today's agenda. So like I mentioned, I am going to highlight some findings from our new report that just came out. I know that many of you are familiar with after-school meals based off that poll, but I will be doing a quick refresher on the program for anyone who may be a little bit newer to it. And then from there, I'm going to talk a little bit about the different waivers and flexibilities that have been updated through the school year, and then how we are seeing this look across the country. And what I'm most excited about is we have two guest speakers today. We have Beth Morris, the Director of School Nutrition from Lynchburg City Schools in Virginia, and we have Khadijah McQueen, who is the Food Access Director for the Capital Area YMCA in New Jersey, who will be sharing their story. So we will be saving time at the end for Q&A. So again, if you do have any questions as we go along, feel free to use the Q&A function on your screen to ask those, and we will make sure to get to those at the end. Next slide, please. All right, and before I really truly dive in, I did want to highlight an event that's actually happening today. So our partners at the Afterschool Alliance hold a national celebration of after-school programs every year, and it's called Lights On After School. And I wanted to highlight this because we know, again, like I mentioned earlier, that after-school programs are a key part of the COVID-19 recovery. We know that many of them had to adjust to the pandemic and are being impacted by it. So we know that additional funding and support will definitely be needed to make sure that every child has access to an after-school program moving forward. So they have a lot of great activities that you can do on their website, ways to engage on social media. So if you do have a second today, I highly recommend checking that out and getting involved with Lights On After School. All right, so again, I know many of you are very familiar with this program, so I will zip through this, but in case anyone is not familiar with the CACFP After School Meal and Snack Program, we did want to give a quick refresher. So this program is relatively new in the scheme of the federal nutrition programs. It was actually only expanded nationwide in 2010 with the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act. Before that, NSLP Snacks were the program that most schools participated in and worked with community sponsors with that. So you'll notice on the slide that there are 3 stars here, and I put these on here because these are things that during COVID have been adjusted somewhat to account for the public health crisis. So per day, children can receive up to 1 meal and snack under 18. To participate, sites usually have to be in an attendance area of the school where 50% or more of the children are eligible for free or reduced price meals. Again, we know that there is some flexibility with this, which I will go into. With this program, you also have to provide some kind of after-school enrichment or activity every day. It has to be offered, and it doesn't need to be tracked if children aren't participating in that directly. And then the thing that I would flag here too is because I know a lot of schools are considering after-school meals this year, and the program is streamlined for school food authorities. USDA does recognize that schools have experience with the child nutrition program, so there have been, streamlining options put into place, like having just an addendum to your existing NSLP agreement, being able to use either the CACFP or NSLP meal pattern. So if you are a school on the line and you're looking to get started, I did want to flag that for you that there are some streamlining options available. Next slide, please. All right. So the great thing about this program is that the reimbursement is relatively high compared to other child nutrition programs, and every meal or snack is served at the free rate. So I have an updated little chart of what the current reimbursements are for lunch and supper and for snacks. And again, lunch would be served more often on weekends, and that's why that's included there. But supper and snack are the main components. So $3.51 for a supper and 96 cents per snack. And this can really add up. So for an example here, I have if a school district or community sponsor is serving 300 children a day for 180 school days at that current reimbursement, those are the reimbursement rates that you would be able to draw down. And again, for the meal pattern components, they do need to be comprised of a grain, protein, milk, fruit, and vegetables. So if you serve any child nutrition program, you are probably familiar with this. For snacks, it's 2 components, and then for the supper, it's the 5 of them. Next slide. All right. So at FRAC, we do yearly participation reports on all of the child nutrition programs, including summer, breakfast, and after-school meals. So we did release our most recent report on Tuesday looking at October 2019 data. And I know what you're thinking. October 2019 does seem like it was a lifetime ago, but we find that these reports are really helpful if your state needs some targeted pushes to engage more leaders, to get more schools on board. We do look at each state's participation in supper, snacks for both NSLP and CACFP. So I did want to quickly highlight some of our main findings from the report. So what we know is that on an average day in October 2019, about 21.6 million children received a free or reduced price school lunch. And then if you look at participation in CACFP after school suppers, which is the main measure that we look at, we know that 1.4 million children received a supper on an average day. So this program has seen consistent growth since it's been available nationwide, which is really exciting. We actually did see a 6.5% increase, which is about 87,000 additional children being served. But we know when you look at the comparison between the two programs, we are only reaching one child with an after-school supper for every 16 that receive a school lunch. And again, this is data from last year. We know that this year is looking very different just because of the different school models and the different ways that schools and community sponsors are running after school suppers. So we do not have data yet, of course, from this year, but this gives a good snapshot on the consistent growth of the program and, you know, the reason behind wanting to continue that growth. Next slide. All right, so this is a lot of data, and if you are not interested in data, I promise I will make this quick, and you can find the follow-up on our report. But I did want to show, so we do look at the breakdown of CACFP suppers, CACFP snacks, and NSLP snacks. And the reason we do this is because, generally speaking, you know, if a school district is just doing snacks through NSLP, that probably means that they are not doing suppers through CACFP. So what we're seeing is that participation in NSLP snacks is actually dropping, and it has for the last 3 years. But what this probably means is that more schools are going to CACFP suppers. So you can see from this chart here that CACFP suppers, which is that red portion, is making up a majority of the meals being served, which is really exciting because we know that students really need that supper to be well fed after the school day ends. So again, if you do want to dig more into this, all of this data on the national and state level is included in our report. Next slide. So again, another finding from our report is just the number of sites from year to year, so October 2018 to October 2019. And again, you're seeing the same thing. So there was a slight drop in NSLP snack sites, about 2.2%, and then there was an increase in CACFP sites, 7.3%. So again, what we're seeing here is that most likely schools that were doing NSLP either at their school sites or working with community partners are moving over to CACFP, and that's why we're seeing that kind of lopsided change there. Next slide. All right. So again, we did want to give just a brief overview of that. The report is on our website, frac.org. We do have included in our on the report is some sample social media messages. We have interactive tables and infographics, and then a press release if you are looking to do any kind of promotion in your state. And then, you know, sharing data can definitely be an important tool, whether you want to engage elected officials or new partners or school districts. So highly recommend using this, and we are happy if you have any questions to connect after the webinar. Great. So I wanted to spend some time talking about the waivers. We know that there has been, you know, many updates and extensions, so we wanted to just give a brief overview of that and then how that can impact adding after-school suppers to your operation. So we will dive into that at this point. So anyone who has been participating in either summer food or CACFP or school meals, you know that USDA has issued and then updated waivers for this school year, and that's kind of come in batches. So we did get the news earlier this month, October 9th, I believe. It seems like, again, years ago, that many waivers have been extended through the full school year, which is very exciting. FRAC was very involved in advocating for those to be extended alongside some of our key partners. So the big one that I'm sure everybody's very excited about is that summer food operations have been extended through June 30th, 2021. So schools, instead of doing school breakfast and school lunch, can choose to do summer food. Community sponsors can also do summer food, but they do need to make sure that they are not duplicating any meals that schools are providing. Non-congregate feeding, which is the opportunity to serve meals off-site, has been extended. There has been a waiver of area eligibility for both summer food and for CACFP, so sites do not need to be in that area of 50% or more of free reduced price meals in order to operate, which we know opens up the doors to many communities to serve that may not have been eligible before, which is great because we know that many families are seeing changing income and employment and that kind of thing. So making that more broad is making sure more children are getting the nutrition that they need. There's also been a full extension of the flexibility around meal service times and meal pattern flexibility. So again, this helps with a non-congregate. Instead of having families have to come each day, they can come and pick up multiple days worth of meals at one point. For those schools that are doing hybrid and remote learning, parents and guardians can pick up the meals rather than having children present. And then there's also been flexibility around the after-school activity, which I mentioned earlier. So usually with this program, some kind of enrichment or activity has to be offered or provided to all students in order to serve meals. And we know that some schools are not in session in person right now. So USDA has issued flexibility around this where activities can be done online, virtually, or a take-home activity. And many states have issued, more guidance around this about what can count. And, many partners are putting together resources to account for this. So we're happy to include that in the follow-up. But I did want to mention that because I know that's something that can sometimes be tricky if a program isn't happening. So the only thing that I would flag here before moving on to the next slide is definitely to make sure that you're checking in with your state agency before making any changes to your meal programs. Next slide. All right, so what does that mean for a typical day now that we have all these waivers? So we know, again, that breakfast and lunch can be provided through either school meals, like it traditionally is, if that's what schools prefer to do. It can be done through Seamless Summer, or it can be done through the Summer Food Service Program. I think at this point, many schools are going over to Summer Food Service Program because it does have the higher reimbursement. It's a little bit easier to operate. It is what was operated in the spring when schools closed down. But again, schools are, working through this and determining what the best fit is for them. So that does provide breakfast and lunch. And then snack and supper, in a more traditional way, I guess, is still being provided through NSLP snacks or through CACFP at-risk after-school meals. So combined, 3 meals and 1 snack can be provided per day. Obviously, serving a breakfast and lunch through summer food gives the highest reimbursement, and then combining summer food with the supper and snack through CACFP allows sites to serve the maximum number of meals available per day. Again, I would just flag that community sponsors should definitely work with schools to ensure that there is no duplication of services. Non-school sponsors can do summer food right now, but states are providing information and guidance on how this overlaps with schools. So I would definitely, again, just flag to check in with your state agency before making any changes to your program. All right, and the next slide that I'm going to go over before I turn it over to our guest speakers who will talk about what they are doing in their community is just what this can look like depending on the school day model. So, if you are doing an in-person learning day, your after-school supper and snack service will look very similar as it did before pre-COVID times. So that means, meals served on-site programs if they're happening in the classroom, in the cafeteria, running pretty similarly how it was before. If you are doing a hybrid model where students may be in the morning or the afternoon, or they're on for a couple of days and then off or home for a couple of days, you can provide the suppers and snacks similar to the in-person learning model, but then they can also take home meals for those days that they are not in school. So that would be a mix. And then if your school district is doing remote or virtual, suppers and snacks can be distributed alongside other meals, breakfast and lunch. So, you know, what we're seeing is that some schools who may not have been doing suppers and snacks before, if they are remote and virtual, they're able to provide and prep the suppers and snacks to go out alongside the meals that they're already providing for pickup or for grab and go. So definitely something to consider, and it can be implemented depending on your school day model. The one thing I would say here too is that, you know, USDA did issue a new Q&A last week, and they did specify that non-school after-school programs that are caring for students during virtual learning days can do CACFP at-risk after-school suppers and snacks, but they have to be provided at the end of the student's virtual school day. And they recommend, you know, switching over to summer food or working with the schools to do the summer food meal so they can do the breakfast and the lunch at the location that they are learning at. So quickly, just in summary, the benefits of serving after-school suppers, of course, the reimbursement rate, every meal is reimbursed at the free rate, bringing in higher reimbursement. If you are already doing some kind of breakfast and snacks or breakfast and lunch service, suppers can be added to that. The waivers and the flexibilities that we detailed make it easier to operate. We're ensuring that students are receiving those 3 meals a day that they need to be well-fed and well-nourished and ready to learn. And then this is continuing to provide really important support to after-school programs. We know that they were very hard hit by the pandemic, and many of them still have not been able to open their doors. So making sure that this continues and as a resource is really critical to their survival. So with that, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to turn the floor over to our next speaker, because I think it's really important to hear from schools who are implementing these programs. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Beth Morris, who is the Nutrition Director for the Lynchburg City Schools in Virginia. So Beth, I will turn the floor over to you.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. As Clarissa said, my name is Beth Morris, and I am the Director of School Nutrition for Lynchburg City Schools. I've been a School Nutrition Director for 19 years, and on the 26th of October, I will celebrate my 5th year here in Lynchburg, which is actually my hometown. My children went through the Lynchburg City School District. Our school division is an urban, suburban school district of about 8,000 students, 20 schools, and 57% of our students are directly certified for meals, and we are a division-wide CEP program. In addition to operating the National School Lunch Breakfast Program, we also have been a sponsor of the Summer Food Service Program and CACFP. And I was introduced to the at-risk CACFP program in early 2018 when I was invited to a meeting between our Central Virginia YMCA and some national representatives from the YMCA. We have 5 location school sites where our YMCA of Central Virginia operates before and after school care. And I was invited to this meeting to discuss and to, as I said, introduce me to the opportunity of CACFP and providing at-risk supper to the children that were going to be in the after-school programs at YMCA. And in the spring of 2018, we piloted the CACFP supper at one of our elementary schools. It was a booming success. Received very well by parents as well as the children and the YMCA. And in the 2018-19 school year, we sponsored all 5. And we were able to do this without having to add staff. We were able to adjust contract times for existing staff to cover the late afternoon. And so it really was a win-win for everybody involved. In 2019-20, last year, we added our 2 high schools that have a very active after-school programs with clubs and sports, and we also added one of our middle schools. So when the pandemic hit and our schools were closed on March 13th, we had a very active CACFP at-risk supper program at 8 of our school sites. I'm sure for those of you that are school division program sponsors listening in today, March 13th was really quite a day for us, and the subsequent months in trying to adapt from a very well-oiled machine of feeding our children in cafeterias and became just a needing to reinvent school nutrition. We became very close friends with our bus and transportation department. We immediately went to from National School Lunch Program to the Summer Food Service Program. We have an old fleet of buses, non-air conditioned. We have a very seasoned staff, but really not necessarily as prepared as we would like to have been to serve meals through 94 degrees temperature in the humidity of Virginia throughout the summer. But hats off to my staff and to everyone out there that continued the very important work of feeding children through the end of the school year, and then we transitioned into the summer food service program. We started out feeding every day. That was just not sustainable. So what we were doing throughout the remainder of the summer was providing meals three days a week, and actually providing 6 days worth of meals, because each day we were providing 2 breakfasts and 2 lunches. And so that was 6 days worth of meals. We did not operate CACFP through the summer, but in plans for school reopening on the 24th of August, that was very much in our plan as we had adjusted to the new normal of feeding students outside of our schools. And so we actually started under the National School Lunch Program, because as of the 24th of August, USDA had not provided the extension of the Summer Food Service Program waiver. So for 6 days, we operated National School Lunch Program and CACFP. And then as of August 31st, we were very, very happy to switch back to Summer Food Service Program. All of our students started out remotely, and so we had bus service as well as 5 curbside locations where we were serving 4 meals a day, breakfast and lunch under the Summer Food Service Program, and snack and supper under CACFP. And we were able to provide a hot meal every day. One of those meals was a hot meal, and we provided that through October 6th, when we started gradually to have students return to our classrooms. And on October 6th, we lost our buses because they now had to be engaged in transporting students to and from school. We started with pre-K through 2nd grade on October 6th. On the 12th, we added 3rd grade through 6th grade, and this coming Monday, we will have all of our students back in school on a hybrid model, Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays and Fridays, and then 3 days remote. What that allowed us to do was shift our service to all curbside, and we are continuing to provide breakfast, lunch, CACFP snack, and supper. We did utilize the meals time waiver, the non-congregate feeding waiver, and the parent-guardian meal pickup waiver. Because we are CEP, we did not have to apply for the 50% eligibility waiver. We also have partnered with the YMCA and 4 Parks and Rec neighborhood centers, and we are sponsoring them as CACFP sites, where we have students who are engaged there in remote learning on their during their out of school days. We also, as this is all morphing, and we are adjusting to the students coming back to school. As I said, we haven't finished that process yet. but we are even providing meals to families that have decided to remain remote, but they do not have transportation to one of our curbside sites. So we have a group of staff that are willing to take those meals to those families. And again, every time we distribute a meal kit, it includes a breakfast, lunch, snack, and supper. Again, very much appreciated by our community. Certainly COVID-19 has added to our direct certification numbers and to the numbers of families that may not participate in SNAP or TANF, but have certainly been financially impacted by the virus and what it's done to our job and also having to keep a family member at home because of children learning remotely. The benefit for a community such as Lynchburg City Schools with such a high disadvantaged population is that those meals mean a lot to those children. And when our families were somewhat concerned that we weren't going to be able to continue our program once school restarted, I had a flood of calls from parents. And it was the thank you for all that you have done. Thank you for all of these meals. It is helping our budget. It is helping our children. And CACFP certainly, as our program wants to remain sustainable, is certainly helping our bottom line to keep revenues coming into our program. But really, the work that we're doing is really to help those kids. And as our programs, our schools reopen and the school communities become comfortable with the in-school setting and after-school activities begin to come back, we will certainly be there to provide the CACFP at-risk snack and supper. And so it has been a really purposeful and rewarding experience to work with my staff and the community throughout this time. And we look forward to our continued partnerships with the community and within our schools to continue offering the at-risk summer food CACFP programs.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Beth. Oh, getting a little bit of feedback. Beth, do you want to mute your line? There you go. Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing that and for giving that insight on what after-school suppers look like in your community. I love these pictures here, and I know that you had many other to share, so we'll make sure that those go out with a follow-up. Great. Well, I know I see some questions coming into the chat box and through the Q&A, so feel free to keep those coming if you have any questions for Beth. And at this time, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next speaker. So next, we are going to be hearing from Khadijah McQueen, who is with the Capital Area YMCA in New Jersey, and she is going to give her perspective from a community sponsor outlook. So Khadijah, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Clarissa. Hi, my name is Khadijah McQueen. I'm the Director of Food Access for Capital Area YMCA located in Trenton, New Jersey. I have been with the Y now almost 3 years. Before that, I worked with our local city government, being a coordinator for summer food service program. Just want to talk a little bit about, our service before the pandemic. We are currently a sponsor of the summer food service program and the CACFP program. We sponsor preschool and at-risk facilities in the city of Trenton, New Jersey. Before pandemic, we had 14 after-school programs, 2 sites were of our own, and 12 was partner sites, such as our local city government, Boys and Girls Club, any schools, churches. And when the pandemic happened in our area, all of those programs closed down. Immediately, we went to summer food service program under the waiver, and what we did is we just rented an equipment vehicle because we didn't have, the proper vehicle to do open sites, which you see on the slide. And we got tables and had our staff, transform our staff in different departments. And we just, continue to serve the community since March 17th. Beginning in April, we partnered and did summer food and CACFP. What we did is we served breakfast and lunch and dinner and snack for the children. We started with eight open sites, which is a summer food service program, and then we combined it with the 8 CACFP sites at different partner organizations. We actually served 31 sites throughout the summer. Of course, when summer began, we closed our CACFP sites down and just allowed the summer preschool, which we had 2 preschools in the city operating over the summer. Currently now we are working under the summer food service waiver, and we are actually doing the CACFP waiver as well. What our school year looks like is currently in our local public schools, we're doing remote learning, all remote learning. And so what we recognize is a lot of our community partners are doing day programs, which they open up at 7:30 a.m. and they keep the kids to 5:30 p.m. A lot of families are working during this time and they don't have the ability to do remote learning. And so we offer them summer food service meals because they are not able to bring bulk items into their facility just for CDC guidelines. And so we offer them individual summer food service meals, and then we provide them with a dinner snack as well. We do grab-and-go meals with our local city government, with their recreation centers, doing grab-and-go meals. We do operate under the USDA waivers for parent pickup, meal service time. We do non-congregate meals. We do provide a calendar for at-risk facilities for the enrichment component using USDA websites such as MyPlate, different complimentary websites that have math or different things in it. And so what we do is just create a calendar for the month and just put different enrichment activities to them. Put it in their bag, and the kids can actually take the meal home and actually have an enrichment activity to do as well. So that's what we're doing with our partner sites. We do have volunteers at different partner organizations. A lot of organization isn't open, but like you see in a picture, we just go outside and set up a table and just continue to serve the children. So one of the things, the benefit of this is families are actually spending time together to enjoy a dinner meal. A lot of families that was working, due to the pandemic, a lot of families are unemployed. They love the feedback that their children are having with the healthy meals. It's 5 components. Children are recognizing that they should have vegetables with their meat, and that healthy food does taste great, and we're receiving feedback. You always want to keep the kids involved, even though it's grab-and-go meals. You just want to maybe slide a piece of paper in there and say, hey, what do you want this week? And allow the children to create the menu. So that's been a big bonus for our organization, is just keeping the kids and the parents involved, sending different recipes home with the families and say, hey, try this. It might be something on your menu, and just give the parent the recipe for it. Partner with your local community organizations. They might have a program they're offering, and see if you can provide food at their program. Even if the children are enrolled, you can always add them on as an open site. Just, check with your state office and see if you can provide an open site and add them into that enrollment form and do attendance and, provide the meals, because during this time they definitely need it. Parents don't have to worry about food for their kids, what they shouldn't, no family should have to worry about, and they can spend that money on something else, that essential items that they need. We're going to continue moving forward for our summer food service, food drives, anything that the community needs. We actually sponsored another YMCA We're help get them started to become a sponsor, and we also sponsor them in the summer food service program. They never served food outside of the pandemic, and just getting them on board. So anything that we can do to help the community, to help the families, continue to provide meal service with our local schools. I just want to talk about this last thing. A lot of schools are providing bulk items, but there's so many communities that have families that are homeless or without electricity, and they're home, and you have a 12-year-old at home doing remote learning by themselves. Just that individual meal, providing breakfast and lunch from a certain food, allows the parent to say, okay, I can go to work and my 12 or 13-year-olds at home. I don't have to worry about them heating up the stove to enjoy lunch. So, just continue to promote the summer food service, even though the local schools are having the bulk items, but that individual meal matters. Thank you, Clarissa.
Clarissa, are you double muted by any chance? I can't hear you.
Yes, I am. Oh, man, I thought I would get away with not doing that this webinar. So I was just thanking Khadijah for your remarks. I think it's really important, like you mentioned, to stay engaged with families and with the children you serve, even if it sounds like it's as simple as like a note or, just having a little conversation. So that was fantastic. I know that we are getting some questions coming in for you. So we'll definitely get to those in just a minute. But in the meantime, I wanted to go ahead and advance to the next slide and just highlight a couple quick things. So on November 5th at 3 p.m., we will be holding our next webinar in this series, and it's going to be on serving meals on weekends and holidays, because I know this is something that there's a lot of back and forth on, and folks are confused about whether this is an option through the CACFP and Summer Food Service Program, which it is. So we are going to have some sponsors highlighting what they're doing around that. So feel free to register for that on our website, frac.org/events. And then I also want to just make a quick plug for some of our resources on the next slide. So we continue to put out resources around COVID-19. We are doing our webinars and our monthly newsletter, and then we also have our traditional guides and reports and similar materials. So feel free to find that on our website at frac.org. I wanted to give a quick shout out for those before we go into questions. And I do see quite a few coming in. So I will get to those, but one that I've seen quite a few of is Beth and Khadijah. Could you quickly just share what a typical CACFP supper and snack looks like? We had some questions about sample menus, so I thought it would be helpful if you want to just quickly share what a meal looks like.
Well, we are only providing, every day that we are serving, as I said, ours is a meal kit that includes SFSP as well as CACFP. So our lunch at the time, because our service is between 11 and 1, a family or a child picks up a meal, they are getting a hot entree, and our CACFP supper component is a cold item. It is a sub sandwich, and I agree with Khadijah that we are not assuming that our families have access to appliances that they can heat their food. So we are very conscious of safety, and that these meals are not going to be eaten perhaps immediately. So our meals are cold. We are very focused on providing fresh fruits and vegetables. So we, at least in that meal kit every day, have at least 2 fresh items, fresh whole fruit, cut vegetables, romaine salads, but we are not sending home meals that have to be reheated.
Great, thank you, Beth. And Khadijah, I don't know if you wanted to quickly touch on what your meals look like.
Sure. So our meals are deli meals. Like I said, we keep the children involved and parents involved. So we do different tasty things such as Taco Tuesdays, where our meals come in a hot container. And like I said, we keep it warm for the kids to actually pick up. So we do Taco Tuesdays, we do macaroni and cheese with broccoli, and we allow the kids to give us feedback on what they're like, because the most important thing is for the kids to actually consume the meals. So we do different fun things, whole grain pizza with mozzarella cheese sticks, just keeping the kids involved. And then we'll throw something in there like, hey, you know, it's a different day. Try this vegetable that you never tried before. Like I said, we just keep the kids involved and make the menu fun, and we do separate menus for each program.
Great, thank you. And yes, for the person who asked about a sample menu, we will try to include that in the follow-up. Alrighty, so we do have some questions. I'll go through some of those, and I'd love if Beth and Khadijah could help me with these. So one question that we got is, are there any good flyers available explaining the extension of school meals to families? So I think that's a great question. I know that many schools have tried to, you know, keep their messaging consistent and maybe not dive into the weeds of what's an option, but while still trying to share information about like pickup time and the like. And we know that, you know, some schools did have to flip-flop between programs when we were between waiver extensions. So I know that SNA is coming out with a lot of great materials around this. I know that many other school districts have also, you know, made their own like landing page around this. But I'm wondering, Beth, if you could maybe speak to, as a school district, how are you, you know, keeping parents updated, or how are you sharing information with parents about changing rules?
Well, we have a messenger system, and much of the messaging that was going out as our meal service was changing was set out through messenger and emailed to our families and their and we also use Facebook, but we just received a state SNA, I mean, that's a state school nutrition memo this morning with resources from No Kid Hungry on flyers and social media photos that can be used with Twitter, Facebook, on your website, and I'd be more than happy to share that. That was sent out to all Virginia directors, but I'm sure that similarly others are receiving that, but I'm certainly happy to share it with the participants today.
Great, thanks, Beth. Yeah. We'll make sure that gets shared. And I would say, too, that many state agencies are also creating, you know, their own flyers with their marketing and branding. So we will make sure to collect a couple examples of those and share it out, because I think that's a question in everybody's minds right now with, you know, school meals looking very different and the school day looking very different. There are ebbs and flows in participation, so making sure that families continue to know how to receive those. So that's a great point. So we had a question about, is it true that if school districts deliver meals to students, those students must be enrolled in an after-school care program, not just have access to enrichment activities? This was from USDA's most recent FAQ, and this clarification was shocking to my district. So that is a great question, and I would like to do some follow-up on this, and maybe Beth, have your insight too, because I know it sounds like you're delivering. But my understanding is that if it's a CACFP at-risk after-school program, so say like a YMCA or Boys and Girls Club, that is where that enrollment piece, just to kind of make sure there's no overlap with schools. But I was under the understanding there was a little bit more flexibility with schools with their CACFP service. So I guess, Beth, if you want to chime in, I know you're delivering CACFP suppers and snacks. Is every child technically considered enrolled in an after-school program, or with the activity flexibility, are you able to make that work?
Yes. Speaking with our state agency, those meals that we are delivering are being delivered to students that are remote learners engaged in after-school activities. And our enrichment activities are available through our website, and we have virtual activities for every day of our after-school program.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. And yeah, to the person who asked that question, I would love to follow up with you. I think again, going back to the point, I think that is in place to kind of make sure there's no overlap in services between, you know, an outside non-school sponsor and a school district. But I think if you are offering the activity, whether it be virtual or take home, that should account for that requirement. So I would love to connect with you so you have the information that you need for that. Great. So next question, we'll get through a couple more of these just in the interest of time. So someone was curious about how all virtual district sponsors are fulfilling the CACFP enrichment requirement. Are they doing activity packets, partnering with nonprofits for virtual after school or activity packets? So again, this is a great question. I know that that's something that No Kid Hungry has a 6-week plan for. I know that, again, many state agencies are starting to pull together and collect resources. I would say, too, that I know a lot of YMCAs and other similar groups, and Khadijah, if you wanted to chat about this, I know that they're really increasing their virtual activities and having links to those as well. So I think it definitely is a mix. And I think, you know, now that we have the flexibility for the year around that activity waiver, I think there are going to be more and more resources coming out to meet that requirement. And yeah, so that's what I have to add there. I don't know if Khadijah and Beth, if you wanted to touch on anything. I know Beth answered that in the Q&A, but anything around virtual enrichment activities or anything else?
Yes, sure. We're just using different resources online, such as MyPlate. We do different things like math, and there's a lot of websites online that we do research, and we just add it to a monthly calendar. So I have what they're having on the menu, and then they have a virtual learning packet. We also partner with community organizations that's also doing virtual learning. Sorry, film activities, SnapEd, they offer a cooking class. And so that's how we just go from Monday through Friday and present something different every day. And like I said, just give it to the kids in their grab and go bag.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and we will, in the follow-up for today's webinar, we will make sure that we include the different resources that we know are out there for sure. Great. So another question is, if you are not a child care center but did offer after-school programming, would you be eligible for a CACFP? Our schools plan to reopen as hybrid model in November. So I'd love to connect with that person a little bit more, but it sounds like if you're doing an after-school program and you're meeting the requirements, you should be able to participate. Let's see here. I'm just trying to consolidate some of these. So this is a question maybe for Khadijah. So the question is, how do the community sponsor partners work out the requirement to ensure that participants are not being served more than once? So Khadijah, maybe you want to talk about how you work closely with the schools to ensure that there's not duplication of meals?
Sure, no problem. So we work with our homeless liaison, our parent liaison on our local Board of Education, and she provides a list of families or recommend families actually go to our site for individual meals. So that's how we know that the parents are not actually picking up from the school, because the school actually has the child's name there. And so instead of them going to pick up weekly meals from the school, they actually come to our site. And so, and then with the dinner program, the kids are actually signed up at each site with our local city government, because they share the same names, and our community partners that serve, like I said, they actually are enrolled in a day school program. So we're doing virtual remote learning, but a lot of working families send their kids to, for instance, us as YMCA, they stay here 10 hours a day. And so the kids are actually enrolled in that program. Just know that parents aren't picking up from 2 different locations.
Wonderful, thank you. And yeah, someone highlighted working with SnapEd for virtual programming, which I think is great. Someone also linked to Texas Department of Agriculture has some resources for fall school planning. It looks like there may be some enrichment ideas there. So there definitely are many resources out there if you don't want to reinvent the wheel. So I think the question that we'll end on, and then we're happy to follow up with anyone that we missed. And I do see quite a few questions about getting slides, so we will make sure that the slides and the recording is available. But this question is, so speaking with many schools, they are not using the extensions to feed everyone because of too much waste. Can you speak to this? Because others still really need, but may not be available for this reason. So the question is around, waste and utilizing the waivers, and I'm wondering if, Beth, maybe you have any insight on, continuing to reach students with the meal programs.
Well, we have waste has not been a consideration, or it's certainly a consideration, but it is something that is second to making sure that all of our children are fed. Whenever you start a new program that is outside the schools, for us at Summer Food Service Program, we have many partners in a traditional summer, and when you start a new partnership, you don't know how many students or how many families are going to come to that site. And so you want to prepare, and in my philosophy, you want to prepare more than less. And then as you build a history of the participation at that site, you're able then to, as we do with all of our traditional in-cafeteria programs, create production based on your historic participation. With our non-congregate and remote programs, we really started the same. We wanted to make sure, particularly in this otherwise very stressful time for families as we were being introduced to this terrible pandemic, we didn't want any family to come to one of our sites or to come to a bus stop and we not have food for them. So again, historic participation at our individual sites and with our individual partners has allowed us to hone our production to meet those sites' needs with very little waste. But as I would say with any startup, you've got to be prepared to experience the startup pains, which can include overproducing. But I would certainly recommend overproducing than underproducing in the start of a program.
Wonderful. Thank you for that insight. It seems like a lot of the best practices, if you've done the summer meal program, sound like they're definitely, continuing on to right now with having ebbs and flows and participation and needing to account for that with food production. So, we're happy to dive into that a little bit more on a future webinar. I think that's something that as the waivers are in place now, more schools may have questions about that. But yeah, I think that we got to most of the Q&As. Again, if there's anything that comes through that we didn't get to, we will make sure to cover that in the follow-up along with all the resources and the slides. So I just wanted to thank Beth and Khadija for joining us today. Again, I know you are super busy, so we really appreciate it. And I hope everyone will consider serving after-school suppers and snacks in light of a lot of the flexibilities that exist. And if you have any additional questions or want to get started or just want to touch base on anything, feel free to reach out to me. My information is all right here, but we really, again, appreciate you joining us, and we hope you can join us on November 5th for our next webinar. So thanks again, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.